Hello, everyone. My name is Jenna Blair Soroka, and I'm a licensed health and nutrition counselor and mindset specialist. I help people nurture a more positive and self-loving relationship with food and their bodies by using a weight-neutral approach and focusing on cultivating habits and behavior changes that allow you to go from the relentless pursuit of body ideals and food obsession to beating self-sabotage, uncovering the reasons behind that, and embracing your imperfections. So today we have Laura, and she is a registered dietitian and board certified sports dietitian who resides in Albany, New York. She believes in a food first approach and focuses on optimizing the health and wellness of active women. She has a Bachelor of Science in Nutrition Sciences from Cornell University and went on to complete her dietetic internship and MBA at Dominican University. She started her own private practice and brand, the Sassy Dietitian, to help be a credible resource for those looking to improve their health and prevent chronic disease through real food. You can connect with her on Instagram at the Sassy Dietitian or on her website at thesassydietitian.com, which I'll include in the description of this video. But welcome, Laura. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, Jenna, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm just to give some background to the audience, I first heard about you, and we talked about this a little, through a podcast, which I think podcasts are just great resources to find really amazing people spreading important messages in the health and wellness industry, like yourself. So I just knew after hearing that, I'm like, I need to get you on here so people can hear all the wealth of knowledge that you bring to this space. So with that being said, I'd love for you to kind of talk about your approach to coaching and how you got to that space, because it's a little different than what most people might think of when they hear dietitian. They think that, oh, here's a dietitian, they're just going to tell me what to eat, right?
Totally. So I got into nutrition mostly because I was a college athlete and I wanted to know how to best fuel myself. And so I feel like I've always come at it from a very positive perspective, but I also came at it from a very preventative perspective. Like I had, my mom has food allergies and I had, grandparents with heart disease and diabetes. And I really wanted to kind of get into the prevention side of things. So going through school, like there was a lot that I didn't agree with in my schooling, which I think a lot of people give dietitians a bad rap because they assume that we still teach the food pyramid and that we're still stuck in the old school ways of teaching nutrition. And honestly, it was anything but. I learned a ton about metabolism and biochemistry and why certain things happen within the body. And then it became up to me to figure out how I wanted to teach that to my clients, which I think is the most powerful part. Is you can know everything there is to know about the body, but if you're unable to educate people and simplify it for them, then what's the point? It's probably really helpful in research and in the medical world, but it's not really helpful at the one-on-one client level or the group coaching level. So I worked in a hospital like many dietitians do. I learned a lot, but I learned that it was not for me because I couldn't have that really deep connection with my clients, which is what I love. I love knowing my clients' kids and I love knowing, what fuels them and, both mentally and spiritually. Like I want to know more about them. And I also want to help them fuel their bodies so that they can do any sport they want to do, any athletic endeavor that they want to do. And so what I found through the years is that I don't necessarily promote one type of diet. I just want to optimize your diet. So when I say diet, I always tell my clients that we're talking about a noun. We're not talking about a verb. We're talking about the food that you eat. So, I use the example of like Laura's diet is different than Jenna's diet. One is not better than the other, but it serves the purpose of feeding that person. If Jenna were to eat Laura's diet and Laura were to eat Jenna's diet, chances are they wouldn't be optimized. They wouldn't feel their best mentally and physically. And that's okay. So, we always work on food first. And then we take the approach of, okay, what other factors in your life need to be changed? Do we need to work with a doctor? Do we need to get more lab work done? Do we need to add supplements? And that individualized non-diet approach is really helpful for a lot of my clients. So it's taken many years to get there, and a lot of roadblocks along the way, but it's been really empowering to help people actually fuel themselves as opposed to restrict themselves, which unfortunately a lot of women are told to do. Women are told to be smaller, and to restrict what they're eating in order to see success and health. And that's just not the case.
Mm-hmm. I love how you went into define what diet is and use it as a noun, because with the messages we often receive, as you were kind of alluding to, it's very very restrictive and very like it's either all or nothing. This is right, this is wrong. And in order to achieve health and wellness, you have to go through this verb use of the word diet, and you have to diet in order to be successful, as you said, when it comes to fueling yourself, and whether it's a body aesthetic or in sports. So just thank you for kind of clearing up and defining what that means, because meaning is everything, right?
Totally. And I hate that dietitians get a bad rap because we have diet in our name. And so I think that a lot of times, off-puts people. And I think more colleagues of mine than not do not promote a verb diet. They promote optimizing health through many avenues. Some are helping diabetics, some are helping kidney patients, some are just in prevention like I am. And so it's teaching everyone that a diet is no more than the food that you eat habitually. It has nothing to do with a verb of going on and off something, which, as we know, long-term does not help. Short-term, it may help with certain symptom management and health states, but it's not going to help long-term with overall health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, long-term versus short-term. They're like totally different strategies, and diet culture tends to promote the strategies that support the short-term results, which are making people believe that are going to lead to happiness and health, which is not the case. So when you're working with clients, I know you talked about before this call, in our initial kind of call, around like you have a food first approach, but you also are person centered or client centered. Can you speak to that a bit more, and how that is a really positive relationship to have with a client?
So everyone is so different, whether it's, their upbringing, their genetics, their relationship with food, their relationship with others. Like there's just so much that's unique about us. And so I really, like when I meet with a client, we dig into everything. So many apologize. They're like, I'm sorry for giving you so much detail. And I'm like, there's literally not enough detail for me to understand you fully and to help you fully. And so, I dig through my client's history, and then we just take it like baby step by baby step, and figuring out like, what could we do today to help improve you tomorrow or long term. And so for a lot of people, they come to me seeking weight loss, but really that's not our goal at all. Like, I don't think I have a single client who I'm necessarily worried about weight loss. Instead, I'm worried about health gain. And even if it's not necessarily like on the blood work, like if blood work is totally fine, but their mental state around food and nutrition is not there, then that's what we're working on first. And so we're always talking about food, and food is always being put first. And so, in nutrition, that's my lifeblood. Like, I'm going to help you feed yourself the best that I possibly know how, for you. And so, today I just got off a call with a client right before this, and she was eating an almond flour tortilla, which everything points to that it's a healthy food. But when we look at her journal, she is bloating and uncomfortable every time she eats it. And she never put two and two together. And so we recognize that, and we're pulling it out, because for her, it's not that she can't have tortillas. It's just that almond flour tortilla, for whatever reason, is causing her issues. Is that technically still a healthy food? Sure, but it's not a healthy food for her because it's not making her feel good. And so there's no blanket statement of like, hey, almond flour is healthy. Sure, you can claim, all the claims around it show that it's healthy, but if it's causing you issues health-wise, then it's not healthy for you at this point in your life. She's got some other underlying issues going on. So like, if we fix up her gut health and her hormone health, could she eventually have those tortillas with no issues? Of course. But right now it's just not serving her. And so we just dig through a lot of that to figure out, okay, what is working, what's not working, what has always worked and maybe doesn't work anymore, or what's never worked, but it might work now. And it's a lot of trial and error. And I tell all my clients that too. I'm like, look, we'll do something that won't work. I promise you that. I'm not a miracle worker. And so there are things that we will try, they won't work, and we will keep trying, because that's what health is all about. But the nice thing about having a private practice is that I have the time and ability to work with clients like that. I don't see them once a year and then push them off and say good luck. I get to see them every other week, and we get to talk about what's working and what's not.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, there's so much that you said in that that last monologue, for lack of a better
Sorry,
word.
yes, I can talk forever.
I know. I love talking with dietitians and health coaches and just people in the space, because it just feels like just so good to talk about this stuff, because it's not really mainstream. And when we're working with clients, there's a lot of unpacking or unlearning of beliefs that aren't serving us anymore. But something that you touched on with your client, you said when she just never put two and two together when she was journaling about like how she felt with what she was eating, and then the almond flour was just like, oh, that's causing the bloating and discomfort. So can you speak more into a food and mood journal and how that in your practice is beneficial, and how people could potentially get started and why they even should get started?
So tracking is a really tricky subject. For some people, tracking is incredibly triggering and it becomes obsessive, and they feel that if they have to track everything, and they're almost trying to beat their score from yesterday. So as a disclaimer, I would not recommend just anybody track. And if you are a first-time tracker and there's a reason you're tracking, whether it's weight loss or symptom management, I would work with a professional, work with someone who can at least have eyes on it and also eyes on you. Because if you become obsessed with it, we have to do a lot of unlearning. So tracking is not meant to be done lightly. However, what I use in my practice is a food and mood journal. And so I don't necessarily care about, it's not that I don't care about calories, because at some point they do count, but most of my clients are coming in because they're fatigued, because they're not performing well, because they're not sleeping well, their digestion's off. And so in order to figure out what food could be causing these issues or not causing these issues, I like to have them track their food intake along with how they're feeling. And this can be really helpful, one, for like symptom management. So if you're noticing that you're bloating all the time, if you've never tracked it, chances are you're not going to be able to tell me any patterns. You're going to be like, oh yeah, I definitely bloat every Wednesday. You're not going to know that. You're going to just be like, yeah, I bloat all the time. But then when you track, you actually realize that you only bloat after your Monday morning meeting, because your meeting was probably so stressful. It has nothing to do with the food. Or you bloat the week right before your period. And so now all of a sudden we can connect the dots and say, okay, it might be something hormonally related. And so without tracking mood, I find that just food is not helpful enough, because for most people, we're trying to optimize health, not necessarily optimize weight. And certainly you can control what you take in and see weight loss, but it's not for long-term success. Whereas the food and mood is for long-term success, right? We're using that almond flour example. Like, we know that that's not going to make her feel good. So now we know, like, that pattern was like clear. It was like she tracked for 2 weeks, and she was tracking for me her energy, her digestion, and she was also tracking her sleep. And this was all with food. So she was using an Excel file because that was just easier for her. But there's a ton of apps that you can use, or you can write it down, or you can take pictures of it. But if you're not tracking how you're feeling around it, then it's really hard for your coach or your dietitian to understand really what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Not to mention there's the whole mental aspects. Like, I have clients who are really anxious around certain meals. So like, they're anxious when they have to eat with friends, or anxious when they eat out, or anxious when they're, away for vacation. And so we journal that so that we give space to it, because if we give space to it, now it no longer consumes us or has power over us. And now we can say, oh my God, I didn't realize that anytime I go out to dinner on Friday with friends, I don't eat all day because I'm so nervous about how much I'm going to eat at night. And you end up eating everything because you're starving, as opposed to, recognizing, yeah, I'm anxious today. Why don't I eat my normal meals so I go into dinner prepared and feeling good, so I don't eat everything that's not tied down. So it can be really helpful. Like, calories and macros are not everything, believe it or not.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And you mentioned how tracking your food and mood creates space. And I think that space that you're talking about is so powerful, because oftentimes when people are focused on weight loss as a means to an end, they're not really tuned into themselves, and there's a lot of like, they feel out of control and they don't know what's wrong with them, and they're obsessed with food. And at the end of the day, like, everybody is the expert of their own body. It's just a matter of tuning back into what they need. And so something like tracking your food and mood, although with your disclaimer, right, like, it can become obsessive, and that's something that I've had to, in my own journey, work through, because I did like track macros, right? It's just, these are all tools, and you have to realize that they all come with benefits, but also they can be maladaptive or unhelpful. So really good points that you brought up. So if people are watching, I think it'd be really great, just, rewind, watch it again, take notes, all that stuff. One thing I wanted to get into, just to kind of wrap things up, is regarding hunger and fullness. So I kind of mentioned this a little bit, but when we're so wrapped up in weight loss, as we gotta lose weight to be healthy and happy, which is kind of just the culture we're living in, where health is equated to smaller, and being unhealthy is equated to being in a larger body, which is just not true in all sense of the word, from like a scientific standpoint and just from like a lived experience standpoint. So how does that approach to just health through the lens of weight loss tune people out of their hunger and fullness, and how can people start to tune back into that? And you might have touched on this through some of the things you talked about, but just to kind of wrap it up a little bit.
I feel like we're told not to trust our body, especially as females. Like, we're literally told that we don't know enough. So we need diet pills and diet shakes, and we need to go on this diet and that diet. And I think, when I work with most of my clients, is that they are so, like you said, like, they are the expert of their body. They've just been trained for years that they're not. And so a lot of times we have to work on confidence, both with food choices and with body. Like, I don't allow my clients to talk negatively about themselves. I'll listen, and I'll say, okay, now we have to spin that and talk about something positive, because I won't allow space for that. Because the more we talk about how awful we feel and how negative everything is, the more we continue to harbor that and to breed that. And so, that's step one, is just starting to have a more positive relationship with self and with body. And then the next is, I think so many people, we have this narrative in our head that like we sabotage ourselves. So for instance, most people love eating, like, not love, they end up eating a small breakfast and a small lunch, maybe some small snacks throughout the day. And then when they get home, or now, most people are living at home, but when they are done their work day, they now have this mentality of like, well, I didn't eat much today, so I can eat whatever I want. As opposed to starting your day and fueling yourself and having the goal of actually fueling yourself for success. I think that it does a lot of damage, just like all day, restrict. And then at night you have none of your defenses up, because you've literally ignored your hunger and satiety cues all day long. And so you can't expect your body to then catch up at night, because it's starving and it's angry.
Mm-hmm.
So fueling yourself from, step one of literally getting up in the morning and saying, I'm going to feed myself and I'm going to fuel myself today. People are so incredibly shocked when they end up eating more during the day, how much better life is at night, because they can actually listen to their hunger and satiety cues, and they don't feel like they need to eat everything that's not bolted down. It doesn't mean that you have to eat a full 10-course meal at breakfast. It just means you need to eat. And instead of just eating a granola bar, could you actually eat something that has protein in it and something that's going to fuel your morning, as opposed to just make you hungry and miserable until you get home at night? And so that's really important, is like, start trusting yourself and start actually feeding yourself. And you'll be so surprised at how much better you'd feel. And then you'll be able to actually feed into that hunger and satiety, because it's really hard to hear and to trust your body when you're starving. I mean, I can relate. I'm not perfect either. There's days where I'm so busy that I don't eat much during the day, and I get to dinner and all bets are off. I'm going to eat whatever is not tied down, because my body is like, don't care. I want to feel safe first. And to feel safe means to feel fed. So, you have to know that feeding your body is actually a really good thing, and you should trust it and love it for it.
Yeah, I love that. And it's that trusting or building that trust. I think it's important for people to realize it's not like, okay, today I was told I need to trust my body, so we're just gonna go on that train. It's a really it's healing work, and it's a process, which is why having somebody like you to guide people through that is really is really valuable, because it isn't easy, and we shouldn't have to feel like we need to do this work alone.
Well, you think about a lot of other aspects in your life, right? You could get through college alone. You could get through school alone. You could learn how to cook alone. You could learn how to do a pull-up alone. Like, there's so many things in life that you could do alone. And
Hmm.
it's not to say you wouldn't be successful, but it takes longer to get there. And that's where a coach, dietitian, et cetera, comes in. We help to make the process more fast and efficient, so you don't have to try every diet in between. And you can actually get to your goal of being optimized health-wise faster. It doesn't mean that it's going to be the perfect journey, but it's probably going to be faster than if you try to wade through it alone.
Yeah, you're limiting that time where you're going through emotional suffering, trying to figure it all out, when there's people out there who are going to school, getting educated, trying to continue their education to make it more accessible to information, and like you said, just um, make it more simple for people to understand as they work through it all. So I love this conversation. Thank you so much for being here. Where can people find you? I mentioned at the beginning, but just yeah, where can people find you and potentially work with you?
You can find me on my website, thesassydietitian.com, or Instagram. Those are the two places I hang out, at the Sassy Dietitian. You can either DM me or email me, and I'm pretty good about getting back to people. I would say emailing is better, because sometimes the DMs get lost, but I try my best to get to everyone by the end of the week. So feel free to see me on either of those platforms.
Okay, awesome. So I have a couple other questions just to close things off. They're kind of more fun and whatever. So are you the type of person who cleans their dishes, like has to get them out of the sink right away, like by the end of the night, or do you like leave them in there and then like they stack up and you're like, okay, this has to be done?
Oh, hell no. They got to be done right away. Right away.
Yeah, I
Always.
feel that. I feel that so much. Do you
My
find
husband will sometimes leave like one dish in there, and I'm like, why is this in here? Why is this not clean? And he's like, because we could clean it all at once. I'm like, nope. If it goes in, it's getting cleaned immediately.
right? I feel like, yeah, like same with my my boyfriend. It's like we're just like opposite ends of the spectrum, but it works. We get through it, right?
Yeah, exactly. It works.
And then this one's a deeper question. So if you could travel back in time and tell your younger self one lesson you've learned over the years, what would it be?
Well, there's probably a lot of lessons, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I always tried to please everyone but myself. So I'm still very much like that. I'm definitely a people pleaser, but I'm way more myself and way more vocal and setting boundaries for myself, both in my personal and professional life. And so I think I would tell my younger self that is to trust yourself, and also stop worrying about what everyone else thinks of you and worry more about what you think of you, and just start being yourself. Because if I had done that sooner, I think my business would have taken off even sooner. So
Right. Love that. Thank you. So, again, thank you for taking the time to have this conversation with me. And I'm going to leave Laura's information in the description. Um, just to recap, I like calling myself out. I called you Laura at the beginning, but then it's Laura, right?
So it's funny because I'm from Maryland, and in Maryland we all say Laura, but I live in New York and everyone calls me Laura
Mm.
because it's Laura. And so I respond, most of my friends just call me Sassy now, for being honest. But I mean, I don't notice the difference anymore, but I just grew up saying Laura, and I moved to New York and I was like, you say your name wrong. And I'm like, it's my name. So it's honestly just like where you live in the world and how you pronounce it.
Right, right. Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to clarify. It's now we know a bit more about you too, but I'm all about calling myself out when things like that happen.
Totally fine.
So yeah, make sure that whoever is watching to check out the description so you can get in touch if you want to with Laura Sassy. go for that. And I'll put my information below so you can get on my mailing list as well, so you can be the first to know about interviews like this, events, and receive additional resources to help you nurture your body through curiosity, compassion, and courage, and so you too can find worth beyond measurement. I'd also love to know what your biggest takeaway was from this interview, so leave it in the comments, and I'll see you next time.